Jeremy, if it's okay, I'm just gonna practice a quick screen share. Is that okay? Before we're joined by the rest of the folks?
Yeah, that's fine. I just got to give you permission to do so.
Okay.
You can do it right now.
Thank you so much.
Do you want to switch? No. Sorry.
Yep, we can see it.
You can see that?
Yep.
Perfect.
All right. I'm gonna stop you being co-host now just to start the meeting.
Okay.
But I can make you co-host again very quickly. And David, I have 6:30, so I'll start the webinar now.
Thank you. Okay, shall we kick off?
Would you like me to call roll?
Please.
All right, so I'm going to mute everybody. Good evening, everybody. This is the Economic Development Committee for April 17th. Committee members, when I call your name, please unmute yourself, acknowledge your name, and then mute yourself again. If you are a board member but not a committee member, I am just going to write your name down, but I am not going to call your name. Let's start with Daniel Murphy. David Estrada.
Here.
Thank you. Amel Afzal. Sandra Alfonso. Joan Body.
Here.
Thank you. Justin Collins. Cynthia Gonzalez. Diana Gonzalez. Hector Gonzalez.
Here.
Thank you. Leonette Lopez.
Here.
Thank you. Antoinette Martinez. Marilyn Melman. Gabino Morales.
Here.
Thank you. Karen Rolnick.
Present.
Thank you. Damaris Santiago. John Santori.
Present.
Thank you. Let me just go back a moment and say Cynthia Gonzalez. Cynthia, you're muted.
Yes, present.
Thank you. Chairperson Julio Pena.
Present, just in the nick of time.
Thank you. Roll has been called.
Very good. Thank you very much. So we'll commence. Our agenda tonight is reduced slightly. Our good colleagues from Equinor informed us yesterday or the day before that they themselves had received some comments from the Design Commission. The purpose of their presentation to this board was to go over the design, our recommendations to the Design Commission. And so they wisely asked to defer to our next meeting as soon as they know what that exchange involves with the Design Commission, because it will necessarily change their design and they want to present accurate information. So we're tabling that element of the agenda that you might have seen in earlier editions. I'd like to welcome our colleagues from the New York City Economic Development Corporation, who I see gathered, Team NYCDC. Hello, how are y'all? Good to see you.
David.
And they are here to offer us an update on the Made in New York campus. And then we'll be followed by our good folks from DCA in this discussion of percentage for the arts. But Jeremy, I want to double check with you. Had you received any communication about a priority order? Does anyone need to leave early? Are we okay opening with.
You got an email previously from EDC, I believe.
Yep. Right.
Requesting a change of order, requesting to go.
Yep. So let's do that.
Okay.
With no further ado, and in the interest of keeping this tight, let's open up with the presentation.
Thanks so much for that, David. Really quick, before I hand it over to my colleague, Christine Paglialunga, who I'm sure you all know very well, I'm just going to do a quick round of introductions for folks in the room, just so you have some, some name to faces. So I'm going to ask my colleague, Jana, to kick us off, and then we'll go around the room.
I'm Jana Paglia. I'm a senior project manager on the government and community relations, focusing on all of our initiatives.
Hello and good evening, everyone. I am Justin Turner, Brooklyn Borough Director for the Government and Community Relations team here at EDC.
Hello, Andrew Abend with the Capital Program, focusing on the mini campus construction.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Paglialunga. I am the Executive Director for EDC Sunset Park portfolio. I am on two cameras. I'm on my computer camera and I'm on the team camera, which is slightly awkward. So if you see me looking in two directions, I'm distracted and looking at both. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you.
Hi, I'm Seema Malik. I'm with the Capital Program at EDC, and I'm doing the site work for Mini and also coordinating the Percent for Art work.
Hi, everyone. Waverly Neer here, asset management team. I'm the asset manager for the main New York campus.
And hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Murphy. I'm with the planning group at EDC, working on the Pier 7 and Bush Terminal Pier 7 project.
Okay, and as David and Jeremy both have already highlighted, tonight we are here to give a very brief overview and update of our Made in New York campus. I don't think any of the information should be new to this group, but we thought it timely to kind of present an update. And then after our update, we will be passing it over to DCLA, who will be presenting some of the Percent for Art that will be going in the Made in New York campus. So super excited about that. They just a heads up, they will be asking for a letter of support tonight. So really excited to hear that presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Christine, and I'm going to share screen.
Before that, the artists are trying to get in. Actually, they're getting an error message. I don't know if they're in the lobby.
David, Jeremy, do we have any
Yep,
folks?
so we don't use the lobby here. Do you know if they are in as attendance? What are their names?
Their email is op at it's really long.
Would you send it to me as a private chat? I will make sure to get them.
I see just 6 attendee level entrances, and they are Aaron Schiffman, Bellstone, Conrad Gartz, Damian Andrade, Ed Cerna, and Michaela Skopnik. Those are the names registered on the non-panelist attendee list at the moment.
What I'm going to do is I'm just going to send the email.
Julio actually also posted the link in the chat.
Very good. So could everyone? Oh, yeah, right. So there's a.
That's the link to register. I could then make them panelists. Okay.
Let's give them just a moment while we process that in the background. I'm going to interject for my EDC folks. I know this is an ongoing conversation, and you've been in front of this board several times on this topic and in other venues, but I want to be mindful that this is a public meeting. It's being recorded, and I want to make sure that as part of your overview is just a baseline definition of what we're talking about and its origin. I think it's important always to acknowledge that not all of us are insiders or self-elected wonks on these topics. And I just for posterity, I'd love people to be able to hear it from you in a nutshell before we get into even slightly more detailed information, please.
That's fine. That's part of it. Can you guys hear me okay? Yes, great. While we get the artists in, I'm happy to start the presentation. Justin's going to share the screen so that you guys can see the deck that we're working with. And yes, David, happy to provide context and background and history here so that everyone's on the same page. And yes, David, to that note, thank you so much for having us tonight. We have been here before. It's been a while, so I'm happy to be back. and telling you a bit about this. This project is a very exciting project. So let's dive right in. Justin, if you could share or flip the slide. So we'll start with some broad brushstrokes on our Sunset Park portfolio, and then we'll dive into the Made in New York campus. We'll go through some of the plans and renderings that we originally proposed. And then we'll look at some construction updates and some images from what we're working on now. And then we'll close up with some next steps. So I think many of you are familiar with our Sunset Park portfolio. It includes 4 main campuses. Sorry, let me see my notes. Give me 1 second. It includes 4 main campuses in our Sunset Park portfolio. So you've got the Brooklyn Army Terminal at the far south end of our campus. That's on the far left side of this map. The Brooklyn Wholesale Meat Market is just north of that. And then you've got the Made in New York campus at Bush Terminal and Bush Terminal Pierce Park. And that's at the north end of our campus or within our portfolio that we manage. SBMT, the South Brooklyn Green Terminal, is of course also in Sunset Park, and also part of our coordinated strategy in Sunset Park. It's managed by our colleagues in Port NYC. So as asset managers, we manage this portfolio of over 6 million square feet of city-owned space to advance a number of goals, including job creation, sector support, and generating revenue to support the city's work. Next slide. So EDC manages its Sunset Park portfolio under a coordinated strategy that's focused on our commitment to promoting both the working waterfront, access to the working waterfront and the natural waterfront. Our tenanting strategy supports the growth of traditional and advanced manufacturing and focuses more and more on green economy and supporting the growth of key sectors like offshore wind. And of course, innovations that support green manufacturing. Our tenanting strategy is also focused on really job dense uses so that we can maximize the number of good quality jobs within our portfolio, and our assets offer a range of units so that we can support both small businesses and large businesses. And as those small businesses come to us and they grow, they can stay in place. And this slide reflects some of the industrial manufacturing sectors that you'll find throughout our portfolio. Next slide. And in addition to our commitment to the industrial waterfront, as we renovate and improve our campuses, we're also creating public access to the natural waterfront. And all of this, of course, aligns with the 197A plan. So I'll talk more about what's planned at the Made in New York campus, but here's a photo of what we did at the Brooklyn Army Terminal a few years ago, back in 2018. So I know that the 197A plan talks a lot about connections to the natural waterfront, and that's what we're trying to do here. By improving the pedestrian environment, expanding access points to the waterfront. So again, here's an example of that, and I'll show you more about what we'll be doing at Mini. Next slide. And this is what it looks like when we this is what it looks like when we animate the public space at the New York, at Brooklyn Army Terminal. This is in an effort to attract people down to the waterfront. We want our campuses to truly be amenities for the neighborhood, not just, well, in addition to places to find work, should also be a place where neighbors and families can utilize open space for recreation. And so this is some examples of some events that we did prior to COVID. Our events plan went on pause for the last couple of years, but we're re-upping it this summer, and we'll be having a more robust event strategy throughout the Brooklyn Army Terminal and eventually at Mini when it opens up. We'll be doing rooftop films again this year. Art Built is doing some programs in May. We'll also be doing some events and refreshments at the ferry port this summer. Next slide. So we'll turn over to the Made in New York campus now. So NYC EDC's Bush Terminal is part of this historic shipping complex that other large industrial buildings in the area are also born out of. And just like at the Brooklyn Army Terminal, EDC has a long-term lease with the city to manage, develop, renovate, and tenant these spaces. Of course, all in compliance with the applicable zoning and land use. And as I think many of you are aware, back in 2017, the mayor announced the repositioning of Bush Terminal as the Made in New York campus. And the Made in New York campus will co-locate garment manufacturing, media, film, TV, production, advanced and innovative industrial uses, light manufacturing, and public realm improvements. There are 2 portions to our Made in New York campus. There's the South Campus, which is in red on the left, excuse me, this is where the Steiner project is going to be happening. And then there's the North Campus on the right, which is in blue. And this is where we'll be focusing our presentation tonight. And this is an EDC-led project, this North Campus. So next slide. I hope you can see this okay. So this is our site plan showing each component part of the North Campus. So piers 5 and 6, those are along the top of the slide. Buildings A and C, that's along the west side of the campus. This is the focus of our improvements. Building B on First Avenue is fully tenanted, and Building D is the future home of Eastern Effects. There are several smaller buildings on the campus, like the admin building, the cafe building, the powerhouse, and also public realm is a big part of what we're doing here, like I said a minute ago. So you can see some of the landscaped areas within this plan here. Next slide. So we'll start this walkthrough with the open space. So making improvements to over 5 acres of public open space within this area. This is concentrated in 4 key areas. The main entry points on 41st, 42nd, and 43rd. There's the Port Plaza, which is Mini Lane through the north-south circulation. This will be a pedestrianized and landscaped area, the waterfront esplanade, and then the Bush Terminal Plaza leading over to the park. And we're going to walk through some renderings. Here is sorry, can you go on mute for a second? 1 second, guys.
Having a little technical difficulties, so I'm going to pick off where Christine left off. So just give us a little moment. Okay, so we're about to take you through a few renderings of the campus. This first view here is the campus from the west, as if you were floating above Pier 6. So just want to give you a second to look at that. Next slide. This here is a view of the new public waterfront access area, including seating areas and walking areas around the campus. Next slide. This is a view of the landscaped area with the admin building in the background. The park would be behind this view. Next slide. This is the interior, and we're naming this Mini Lane next to Building A. And again, this is a pedestrianized area with seating and landscaping. Next slide. In order to create all of these pedestrianized areas, we're making a change to the interior street network within the campus. Currently, it's a series of interior two-way streets. As a part of this project, we are recirculating the campus to really create a one-way loop where vehicles can enter on 41st Street and exit on 42nd Street. We are also relocating the loading docks for Building C from 43rd Street to the waterfront side and slightly changing the circulation of 43rd Street. And I just want to, can you just trace with your finger here to create the pedestrian plaza located here. Next slide. This here is a rendering of Building A. It is a 200,000 square foot facility where we are doing a gut renovation. Tenanting will be a combination of traditional and advanced manufacturing with a focus on innovation, sustainability, and circularity. We are particularly interested in companies doing local manufacturing as well as sustainable fashion and future-looking industry practices. Units will range from about 1,500 to 35,000 square feet. Construction started in the year 2020, and we expect to be complete in early 2024. We have a few tenants with term sheets and are moving those to leases in the coming months as we ramp up our leasing activity through our broker. NYC EDC anticipates that asking rents will average at about $21 per square foot. Next slide, please. This here is a rendering of the lobby of that building. Next slide. Building A, C, and the public realm site work. Just to give a brief update, this construction work is ongoing and expected to substantially be complete in early 2024. Con Ed work. It will be finalized for power distribution on the campus, Pier 6 and Bush Park. The new waterfront esplanade structure is installed, and we are extending the waterfront out for pedestrian access. And then last but not least, we are the water, the sewer, and the electrical are being installed along 41st Street, which is now called Made in New York Lane, and 42nd Street, which is the infrastructure work, which is up next. And then moving on, building D is the design and cost estimation is underway. The project is targeting completion in 2025. To give a brief update on Pier 6, this is a project to improve the pier so that it can be an amenity to the campus. An engineer has been retained to start a condition assessment. Design and permitting process, and then overall, we're looking at this process to have a community engagement process, so more to come on that. The detailed project scope is to still be determined, but ultimately we see it as comprising public access walkway, maritime uses, maybe an additional to public parking, and a live edge if feasible. Next slide. We are also doing work focused on Pier 7, and I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Sarah. Sarah, you want to take it away?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. In case you missed my introduction, I'm Sarah Murphy. I work in the planning group here at EDC. So many of you will be familiar with Pier 7. Shown on the side here, it's a site that's near the end of 41st Street between SBMT and Pier 6. So the condition of the site, it's a remnant of an earthen pier that has been inactive for decades, and over that time it's deteriorated and it's showing its signs of age. As you can see in some of the pictures there, the site is now in disrepair. The former pier shed that had been on site is long gone, and the concrete decking on top of the fill is collapsing, and there's a good amount of debris. So in its current state, it's creating a hazard from the uplands areas and is clearly not safe for the public. And also the future use of the site is limited due to how it's regulated under wetland regulations. So as far as the future, we see the site as a prime candidate for habitat restoration. We do see some signs of habitat that's emerging, some opportunistic vegetation through the cracks, and we've observed some birds in rocky areas toward the end of the pier, for example. So by removing the remnants of the pier and the surface debris, this will address the current conditions while also reestablishing the ecological functions and some form of marine habitat in place of what's there now. So as far as next steps on the process to conduct the ecological restoration, we need to go through a review process with the Army Corps of Engineers. EDC is putting out a proposal on behalf of the city to conduct the restoration at Pier 7 and ensure that it is kept protected and is done successfully. So the Army Corps of Engineers will be releasing that proposal for public notice, and the Pier 7 proposal is a part of a larger document that will be released. So that once that goes out, it'll be out for about 30 days, or it'll be out for 30 days, and the public can review and comment on the proposal during that time. And we're anticipating that should be released this month. Just another thing to mention as far as timelines, further down the line, when we get to a point, if there's permits for this project, there would be another 30-day public comment period associated with the permits, also run through the Army Corps. But this one, of course, now is happening first. So we wanted to bring this all to your attention at this point in the process. And I'd be happy to take any questions about that later on as we cover it.
Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. Thank you, Sarah. So we'll go through some photos, some pictures from the construction site. Here's some recent images. So this is two different angles of building A. The east side is in the top right corner. You can see building B in the background, and on the left, that larger image, this is the west side of the building. Just like at building C, we've reoriented the location of the loading docks for building A. So you can see here some of the pedestrian access and the truck access. Here, next slide. Here's so on the left, you can see the exterior of building A on the left side of that picture, and then building C. And on the right side of the screen, this is the interior of the building A annex unit. So this is the large ground floor double height interior unit of building A. Next slide. And here's the waterfront esplanade, which is construction is currently in progress. It's looking really, really nice. We're excited about that. Next slide. Bush Terminal Pierce Park. So this is really exciting. At long last, we can finally say that our projects at Bush Terminal Park are complete. So the lighting project is done. This is introducing lights into the sports fields. The sinkhole repair at the north entry pathway, that's complete. Pier 4 sinkhole work, that is also complete. Pier 2, we are just wrapping up now. So the asphalt placement is complete. There's some stone placement and paving that's happening right now, but for the most part, we're all done here, and I've been waiting a long time to announce that. Next slide. So that wraps up our presentation tonight. I know that was quick, and I'm happy to share this deck. Do want to note there's a few upcoming opportunities for the community to participate. I know that folks have been really interested in seeing the Made in New York campus, and I think I've told a few of you, but it's been really hard to take members of the public through since it's an active construction site. It's really a safety issue, but I know that there is interest. So I'm happy to coordinate some tours with members of the community board and members of the public. We can set that up for later this summer. As we noted earlier, as Justin might have noted, with Pier 6, there will be a public engagement component for that, and we will be in touch with the community board and promote that widely. So that will be another opportunity. And I also want to take this opportunity to promote the Sunset Park Task Force. So as many of you know, this is a legacy of Councilmember Carlos Menchaca. We run the Sunset Park Task Force quarterly, more or less. We have these meetings. In the last couple of years, we've opened it up to the public, and we would love to get more membership on the task force, and particularly more representative membership. We'd love to get more members from the Chinese, Latin, and Middle Eastern communities. So I wanted to use this opportunity to invite folks to that as well. With that, I think we're happy to take some questions on the Made in New York project before we hand it over to our colleagues at DCLA for their presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, let's facilitate some questions. We'll set up a stack if I see raised hands. Maybe it would be just generally useful if you returned to one of the slides that shows the general footprint of the entire project, so that as people make reference to things they heard very quickly a few moments ago, we can all orient ourselves. I have a bunch of just sort of point of information questions, but I want to defer to any members of the committee or the board who want to open with questions. Let's do raise hands, if you will. I'm going to try to keep an eye on that. Y'all can see the participant list also. So if you see a raised hand that I don't, I'd like to be as fair and quick. And I'm going to ask everybody to limit their questions to something that could be answered in the context of this meeting, and understand that we can certainly table questions for more thorough answers later. And please, my personal request to you is ask questions that you need to know about, but maybe blend them in your sensibility with things that the entire group needs to hear or the general public needs to hear. So with that, do we have any questions, ideas, comments, raised hands? I'm looking at panelists, and I do see a raised hand. Gavino and John Santor and John Fontillis. So we'll go first Morales and then the two Johns.
Hi, you guys see me?
Good, that's okay. We can hear you. I wanted to make sure you were able to unmute. Go right ahead.
Actually, David, really quick. I'm so sorry. And hope I'm pronouncing that right. Before we get into questions, David, we have some folks in the next presentation who are having some difficulty joining the meeting. I just want to see, is there a different international link? Because they're getting the same error code joining this Zoom meeting, regardless if it's a panelist link or it's a public, or it's the general public attendee link. I'm just curious, is there some type of feature or some type of separate link for international residents? I'm not sure.
Jeremy, I defer.
Number that folks internationally could possibly partake in?
Let me see if I could find.
Yeah, the web link is the web link as far as I know across the board, but there are a variety of dial-in numbers if someone's coming in phone. I had a note to file. I had this same issue with a Zoom meeting that was happening locally 2 hours ago. It may be platform based. But in any case, Jeremy, are you able to keep just sort of attempting to contact those folks, or do you have what you need to try to help
I
them?
can, let me look for an international contact. And if I find it, I will send it to the email address that I have previously gotten.
Great.
I really appreciate that.
So let's keep that ongoing. Thank you for flagging it. And let's go, Gauino, John Santore, John Fontilas, and then we do have a quick question in the chat as well.
Hi, yes, thank you for that. For this project as well, we did need something like this to be done at the waterfront. It's been dilapidated for over many years, and we thank EDC for doing this project. My question was actually asked in the chat. I just saw it come up. It's about free parking. Is it free, or is it like some type of payment system, or how is the parking going to work out?
Yeah, there's no plan. There's really no intention. We will not be charging for parking. Any parking that we do put on Pier 6 will be free and open to the public. And right now that's the only place that we plan to introduce parking to the site.
Okay, thank you. And my second question and last question is, how many parking spots will be available for the public? Thank you.
Yeah, I think Justin may have mentioned this. We are just starting our design and engineering process, and that will tell us the maximum number of parking spots. I don't know that we necessarily want to maximize parking on the pier. It's a pretty great amenity, and we're trying to do a lot there. So it's a matter of understanding what we can do and what makes sense and what folks are interested in. I know that in the industrial business zone that there's high demand for parking and very few places to park. And so, acknowledging that, also acknowledging that a lot of people who visit Bush Terminal Piers Park often drive to get there. So, any parking that we do introduce should be an amenity again to both the campus and to the park. So we don't yet know, but we know that there's a lot of.
Understood. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. John Santore?
Thank you. I'm going to be as brief as I can. I just, for the sake of transparency, want to say that I have been against this project for several years now because I don't believe it's a democratically designed project. But I'm asking these questions, as I have many times in the past, in good faith. And I believe the elected officials, or I'm sorry, the EDC officials who are here are operating in good faith. And so I'm asking the questions with that spirit in mind. I sent them all of these questions on Friday as well. I'll read each one. Each question is brief. Is it accurate that the Made in New York campus was designed, announced, and expanded by NYC EDC and the mayor's office without opportunities for local residents, organizations, or elected officials to publicly comment on the project before major land use, budget, and tenanting decisions were made? And I can just wait for any comment you would like to share, and then I'll just go on to the next question.
I think it was 8 questions, and then do you want me to answer them, or do you want me to answer after?
Why don't I just ask the question? I'll be as quick as I can, and any comment you would like to share.
Again, mindful of a public audience and recording. Let's work in dialogue.
Sure. So I'll just say quickly. So as I mentioned during the presentation, EDC has a master lease with the city, which empowers EDC to develop and renovate and lease and program the site, again, in compliance with zoning and land use. This project conforms to all zoning. It's also in alignment with community plans like the 19070 plan. EDC presented this project several times between 2017 and 2020, between the community board, on meetings with local electeds, and with the task force, which I understand back then was not an open and public group, but it still is a group of stakeholders. So we use those venues to engage with stakeholders. I know, John, that you're really concerned with how this project was managed in the beginning, and particularly the degree of public engagement. And I hear that, and the points are well taken. And I hear that you want more and better going forward. And I hear you, and I take that point really well as well. So we'll endeavor to do better at community engagement going forward.
Thank you. Is it accurate that, I know you present on the North Campus, but this is a South Campus question. Is it accurate that the only information NYC EDC has supporting job projections for Steiner Studios, the South Campus project, the only information comes from a July 13th, 2020 email from Doug Steiner and Steiner Studios RFP response? And if so, why does NYC EDC trust those projections?
So EDC worked closely with Steiner on all aspects of this project as we negotiated that lease and do the RFP response discussions. They're a company with a long track record of success in this sector, and they also have a really impressive track record with their workforce development and hiring. They know this sector really well. So in order to understand the job projections for a facility of this size and this capacity, yes, we worked with them to understand what would a reasonable projection be. And we were comfortable with that. I mean, for the number of sound stages that Steiner are building, for the types of projects that they intend to host there, we think that the job projections are totally reasonable.
Okay, so same type of question for the North Campus. The information EDC has supporting job projections for the Garment Hub on the North Campus, do those come from any sources other than the economic impact estimate formula used by EDC and Slow Factory's announced plans for employee hiring and training? So are there any other sources for those numbers?
Yes and no. I mean, those are really the main sources, but I will say that, you know, our job or our employment projections at this campus are consistent with our overall job density goals throughout our portfolio, which aligns with our tenanting strategy, which is to achieve high job dense uses. We aim for about 1 job per 500 square feet. This math is not necessarily consistent with that. We understand that there's going to be some tenants who have more jobs, who have fewer jobs. So between these inputs, yes, this is where we landed. I also want to take a moment, actually, because this didn't come up during the presentation, and to your point, John, about Slow Factory. I think it's worth noting that Slow Factory was the first lease that we signed at Building A. They were the first major tenant that we announced. Slow Factory are not going to be joining us at the Made in New York campus. EDC and Slow Factory mutually agreed that this was not the right time. They're a really great organization. I think they do great stuff, and I wish them well in the future, but I just, so that everyone knows that Slow Factory will not be at the Made in New York campus.
Okay, thank you. That's important to know. I just have a few more and they're each short. Is it accurate that EDC currently intends for Pier 6 to primarily serve as a parking lot, as is the case with Pier 4? And will EDC seriously consider alternative proposals for Pier 6 if they have public support?
Yeah, so the purpose of Pier 6 is really to be an amenity to support the successful operations of the campus and to serve as an amenity for people who will work there, who are visiting, and who are visiting the park. There's a design process that will commence later this year, and there will be opportunities for the public to input.
Okay. Does EDC have plans to monitor hiring and job training on either the North and the South Campus or the South Campus? If so, will that information be released publicly, and how often will it be released?
We have in our leases, the tenants are required to report jobs when we ask, when we survey them. We intend to do the same at the Made in New York campus. We do not have specific plans yet on how we will publish that information, but I know that you are interested, and I know that others have asked. I will also say that EDC's leadership is very, very interested in the data. We're doing great work that we're really proud of, and we need more information to help tell that story. So it's something that we are focused on.
Thanks. I'm almost done with the questions. Has EDC had any conversations with Sunset Park High School concerning the high school film and TV training program announced in August 2020?
Mm-hmm. So that is part of this, that program is part of the Steiner lease, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that program is really a Steiner obligation. And so it's up to Steiner to determine, to do their outreach and to determine how they are going to satisfy the education requirement, which is, I believe, either a high school program or a CTE school program. It is modeled after their Navy Yard work.
Last two questions. Will the building Steiner Studio intends to construct on the Made in New York campus be visible from the park itself in Sunset Park?
Right. My understanding is that The tallest part of the Steiner project is 5 stories or 79 feet, which is no taller than any of the other buildings within this campus or neighboring. I don't specifically know the answer to that question, John, if you can see it from the park, but I know that it's about the same size as its neighbors.
And the last question is, and thank you for your answers, I appreciate them. Will Sunset Park residents, local nonprofits, and local elected officials be provided with opportunities to meaningfully influence future development plans for buildings C and B on the North Campus, as well as the Powerhouse, the Roundhouse, and the 51st Street train yard?
Right, yes, so there are currently no additional development plans for building C, building B, for the Powerhouse, for the Roundhouse. 51st Street is rail yard, is an active rail yard. There are no plans to deck over it at this time. All to say, so there's no plans to do development on the sites that you mentioned. However, as always with any new proposed project, we will absolutely be reaching out to the electeds. And I guess to end where we started, I hear you that you're interested in seeing more and better participation. So we will do that for future projects.
Thank you for your time. I sincerely appreciate the answers.
Good questions all, John. Thank you. And very informative. And thank you also, EDC, and Christine for thoughtful answers. I think several of those are things that would be ongoing dialogue rather than a one-time Q&A, obviously, just by the nature of the topic. May we move on, please, to John Fontillas? Oh, sorry. I've been chatting with Jeremy in the background. Our international participants who are having trouble access, they've been resent the link. I think that's the link, and international dial-in numbers for telephone access. So we're doing all we can in the background to have them join the meeting. Maybe the Percent for the Arts, DCA and EDC teams might contemplate a contingency around them not gaining access if they haven't yet, but we'll keep trying. And any other Zoom experts on the call, don't hold back if this rings a bell for you and you have a handy solution. Thank you. John Fontillas?
Hey, everybody, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I got a softball question after all what Judson interrogated. Will 41st Street and 42nd Street, I heard mention it was functioning as a loop as access to the campus. Will that remain on the street map as public streets?
I believe so. Sorry, Justin, can you flip to the circulation site or plan? Oh.
I'm just asking if is public access along that loop will be maintained 24/7?
It will be. It absolutely will be. Gosh, that's a great question. And I didn't revisit this before tonight's meeting. Will they remain public? I mean, they'll obviously be public access. Are you asking if like DOT is going to be clearing the snow and things like that?
Well, no, I see a lot of streetscape improvements on there, and typically that you normally see that only on private street campuses, such as at Industry City. So I'm asking the same question here. I mean, you're a public agency, but is this on the city street map as a public street network, or are you making changes to that in order to maintain some level of control of access during the day?
That is actually a really good question. So the campus will be accessible 24/7. I can say that. So access to get into this area, it'll never be gated off. As far as those being mapped as public streets, do you know?
There's currently no plans to, this is Andrew Abend with EDC, by the way. There's no plans to remap any of the streets. 41st Street was never mapped in the first place. 42nd Street up to Mini Lane is a mapped street, and it tends to stay that way. And is the same length down to 43rd Street.
All right, so then the loop that you're implying around Building A is only public along 42nd Street to Mini Lane. Is that correct?
Well, it'll be publicly accessible, but it per DOT, it's not mapped. It's not going to be. We're not going to have any additional mapping.
John, just to be clear, you will always be able to drive this loop.
Well, I would also add though, John, if you want to get so this loop is really just going to take you to the back of Building A and C, which you would only need to do if you're going to the loading docks. If you want to go to the park and park there, then you would go down 43rd and access the parking lot there. Once we introduce public parking to Pier 6, then conceivably, yes, this is the route that those cars would take to get to Pier 6 to enter and off of 41st.
Understood, but if it's a private street, there's also the ability to exclude certain things, certain activities. I just want to make sure that we are looking at a public space in terms of access as well as activities along that loop.
Well, in layman's terms, I'm trying to follow. Thanks, John. I'm getting Industry City after PTSD here with it. But will there be a guard gate as there is entering the Brooklyn Army Terminal campus, or will it feel more like driving down the lane to get onto Pier 4, which is free in and out, like he's freely in and out without an access point of control?
The latter.
Okay. So then the last question, if I may, on Pier 6, it sounded like you hedged a little bit in terms of I hear parking, yes, as one of the activities, but I would think that CB7 would insist on public access to the perimeter as much as possible. I don't think we want to have another recap of Pier 4, where essentially it is a giant parking lot all the way out to the edge, and only we backed into some access only on the north side after a lot of hemming and hawing. So I would like to lay down a card right now that I don't think CB7 would be happy with less than full perimeter access around Pier 6. But as you said, that's coming up in design. Christine and I go way back in terms of design. So I think certainly that's something that I look forward to seeing your approach on that.
Yeah, happy to. And just to be clear, if I hedged, it was not intentional. The plan is absolutely for Pier 6 to have a public access, at the very least a perimeter. We were also trying to include this eco-care concept that I've heard from Community Board 7 several times. What that looks like, what is involved in that, that'll come out during that design process. I'm also not interested in recreating that Pier 4, as much as the nurses who work over at Langone and ferry riders love to park there. I think we can probably do a lot better here. So I'm looking forward to this design process, and we'll be back with our updates.
Put it this way, for 50 years, Sunset Park has been separated from the waterfront. We'd love to be able to access it going forward.
Absolutely.
Here. I see Katie Walsh's hand up, so you're on deck. But before Katie, please, if I could have just your permission to read a couple questions from attendees in chat, because they seem quick. Will the parking be free got covered? Yolanda Cintron expressed in the context of that question concern about, because meters are being, Third Avenue is being regularized with paid parking and meters and such. So, personally, I'd encourage EDC, once again, even though it's your property portfolio and you're on your mission and you have your property boundaries, to be as expansive and contextual in your thinking as you can be, including all the upland connectors, Third Avenue parking impacts, and so on and so forth. Zach made the point of information that there had been some engagement. Thank you. And then Belle Stone has a question: will there be stoplights or any, and I'll extend it, any other traffic controls added on First Avenue for safe pedestrian crossing into the park or the mini campus? As it is, we can witness quite a dangerous and awkward place with so much commercial traffic.
Yeah, I've experienced that myself walking down to the park. I mean, I know there's a crosswalk there, but that only really does so much. And First Ave is like the Wild West at times. Mm-hmm. There are no plans right now to bring a traffic light. It's something that we'll be monitoring, and we'll be, we want this, campus to be incredibly successful. We want it to be amenity. We want people to feel safe visiting there. So if it becomes an issue, it's something we'll be on.
And so is that a conversation? I'm sorry, I'm going to expand on that question and we'll go straight to Katie. Is that a question where we as a community board need to be grappling with DOT and EDC in the room at the same time, talking about how it really works instead of segmented little projects that seem to be totally siloed from each other? That's the editorial part. But how do we get to a place where EDC and all the agencies involved, that might be the train, the train, DOT, DEP, all of them, and all the little nooks and crannies, DOT lighting unit. How do we get a feeling and actual outcomes around cohesive perimeter and adjacent design on the streetscape?
I mean, David, hearing what you're describing, I don't want to have to create that kind of, Kafkaesque bureaucratic nightmare for you, although I know that we all experience it a fair bit right now. Like, so I don't want you to have to bring EDC to the table or bring DOT to the table. I mean, I will be at this site all the time. If it becomes an issue, we will, raise it and make sure that it is a safe, accessible site for everyone. Right now, we don't anticipate that there will be new traffic from this site such that it will require it, but I get that it's already a bit of a challenged area to get around. I will also flag the one-way pair study. So the one-way pair, we would all like to see move towards implementation. I can't say when that will be, although I know that it's something that EDC is actively working on. And so I think the plan as well is that by changing First Avenue and Second Avenue into one-ways going in different directions, between that, it will have a calming effect and will create a more safe environment.
Okay, well, I'm gonna take that question and put it in my back pocket and
please do
carry it with me like an old photo and bring it out to show people whenever we have a chance. But I think we need to get into that bureaucratic quagmire with DOT and EDC at the table at the same time, talking about that broad context. But that's that's the opinion of a guy who gets to pretend he's co-chair for tonight. Katie, can we go straight to you and rescue me from talking anymore?
Thanks. I have a couple different questions. I'll try and keep it short too. So with transportation, so I'm the chair of the Transportation Committee for Community Board 7 and the chair of the Special Committee on Last Mile Trucking. A lot of the issues that I'm going to bring up. So specifically as it relates to the First Avenue conversions, I mean, we need to have you all come and we need to engage on this within the community board. So again, that's like just further follow-ups, discussions with the community board on that. It's not clear to me. There are blue arrows that are going around. I don't think that means it's for bikes, but I do have a concern about accessibility onto 6, not looking like there's pedestrianized access. It's just the way it's presented by way of this design, just looks like it's moving boxes and cars. So you can clarify that for the record, going through, just explaining like if someone can come down 41st basically by foot or on a bike and get themselves onto the pier, or if they only have one access point through 43rd. It's a little bit more on this like impact of the mini campus. And again, huge, massive concern in our district is last mile trucking facilities and trucks and having more trucks and the types of vehicles that we're talking about being diesel vehicles until, further notice. Tell us more about like, what exactly are we going to see down there? What is going to be moving around the campus? What do those trucks look like, smell like? What are they emitting? Are there any requirements? We asked this a lot to Steiner Studios, and they said there's nothing we can do about what moves on our campus, and there was sort of like no commitment related to transportation electrification within their design. And in this instance, you guys are a city agency, so you actually have a little bit more. You're in a different position. So what are those again? So access and also if you could speak to what's moving around, what it looks like, knowing that this is such a big problem in our community already.
Yeah, happy to. So all of these street access points are accessible by pedestrians. 41st, 42nd, and 43rd are going to have sidewalks that pedestrians can use. So the modes of transportation will be separated. Mini lane down the center will be fully pedestrianized. Those blue arrows are meant to signify that it would be a shared drive for bikes to use along with cars and trucks. So that is what those blue arrows signify.
So sharrows, you're going to have bikes have to share the lane with trucks. Super dangerous. Doesn't work. People getting killed all the time. We know this. It's not a safe design. It needs to be protected.
I would also say that these are not through streets, right? So you're not going to have trucks or traffic flying through here. This is a matter of 2 blocks, and the trucks who are taking this route are taking them specifically to go to a loading dock. So again, it's not going to be fast moving traffic. It's not even going to be heavy traffic, which moves into your second point. When we talk about like green economy and green industrial and green manufacturing, it's one of these kind of squishy terms, like what are these things? And if you ask me, and I a lot of folks in this space feel like it's the things that are around manufacturing and things that are around industrial that are what make it so noxious or impactful on the environment, like trucks and trucking. I have very little impact on which vehicles are accessing or that my tenants use or that will be delivering them or taking goods away. What I do know is that we are using these facilities and positioning them and programming them so that, again, they're highly job dense. We don't have warehouses. This is not going to be a heavy shipping facility necessarily, but it is manufacturing and there will be some shipping out of this site. But we are trying to, again, program it so that it is not going to be the heavy kind of truck use that you might find, again, at like a last mile facility or at another warehousing facility. I don't have the traffic counts or the projections with me now, but again, point well taken. I don't want this to be, a highly truck traffic site. In terms of electrification, I will say that it is something that EDC is moving towards throughout all of its assets, and it's something that we'd like to be expanding in Sunset Park. There's a high demand from our existing tenants to have electrical stations or electrical charging stations for their cars. As much as I can do that and have these campuses be a best practice for how to do green manufacturing and green economy, if it includes charging stations, I want to bring all of it there. Again, I want this to be the best way to do industrial green manufacturing.
Okay, and I'll go in a different direction just to say there are opportunities that other cities have led on where they have something called a low emission zone. This could be an opportunity for our district, our community board to look at what, again, other leading cities have done, especially around an industrial zone. So just like you're talking about an eco port, again, New York can learn from what others have done, and this is an opportunity. I'm going to just to say, Christine will, all of these buildings have to comply with local law 97 because everyone will need to comply with local law 97. Can you just confirm that, is there any other sort of on-site renewable energy generation that will be happening with the mini campus specifically?
That's a great question. So building A was designed and construction started before city buildings were required to comply with local laws. So building A does not. Building C is of the same generation. It currently does not. Building D is the future home of Eastern Effects. Once we do start construction there, it will have to comply with local law. There are currently no plans to do work on building B, but if and when we do, again, it will comply. Part of what triggers that local law compliance, or at least in the past, was reaching a certain level of investment, and then DOB resiliency sustainability triggers kicked in, and local law triggers kicked in. If we want to do any more work in any of these buildings, it's going to require us to do all of those local law investments. I will also add to this as a bit of a caveat. I don't want our buildings to be old dinosaurs. I want them to be good neighbors. I want them to be contributing buildings and to be environmentally sustainable. If we can get our buildings up to that local law standard and other environmental standards, it's something that I'm very committed to. And I know the EDC is interested in introducing solar panels and green roofs, and again, being good, having these neighbors be, having these buildings be good neighbors, and again, contributors.
Okay, but for the nothing, they're not going to come under compliance now because of the timing, and maybe D will, but I didn't hear you have any other commitments in terms of on-site generation and plans. So I just think I want to kind of call that out. The last thing is just a suggestion is around, I think it's, if you're going to do a community process for Pier 6, I was really excited to hear what Sarah Murphy had to share about Pier 7 being an ecologic, looking at restoration. Between Pier 5 and Pier 7, I think both presenting as an opportunity for return to marine wildlife. I just wanted to invite you to do a public process for these 3 piers. I think this is an opportunity for our community to engage, like just limiting it to 6 and opening it up, even in the concept of it kind of returning to nature, what that looks like as an educational opportunity, given all the other investments that are happening in their area. So thank you.
Oh, David, you're muted.
Still muted? I thought the space bar was going to bring me in. Sorry. Thank you for that exchange. I'm going to read 2 quick questions that have come through in chat, and then we'll go to Cindy Vandenbosch. And I'm mindful that we're at 7:30, and we want to leave plenty of time for our DCA portion. So let's keep our exchanges, kind of on point so that we don't miss out on the other half of what we're doing here this evening. Sam Sierra asked what process was used to co-name the street Minnie Lane. And I don't think that, and did the community board have any say in that, or was that just kind of something that came up out of EDC?
I don't believe that Minnie Lane was previously a public street. I think that it was an internal circulation route. And so I don't think it had a previous formal name.
More a function of the project. Okay. Thanks for that clarification. And Yolanda Cintron just made a point of information about the train stations at 36th and 45th, and wondering if either trains or I'll add buses, if you're in any consultation with the MTA, would there be any change in public transit resources or patterns associated with sort of this I'll add this, the combined effect of Equinor, Steiner, Mini, right? So there's a lot of stuff coming on. So any conversations there that this board could know about?
I don't think I have any information on that. Can we get back to you on that, David?
Sure. But I'm glad to get it on the tables, and that came through written. Cindy, may I hand it off to you?
Sure. We also have Damien Andretta, and sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but he also has a question in the chat.
Oh, I'll look for that. Cindy, you go ahead and we'll come back to that. Thank you.
Okay. Hi. Yes, thank you so much for the presentation and for responding to everybody's questions. I just have 2 short questions. One is, will there be like an employment center or workforce development center that's easily accessible by local residents, where they can like step in and ask about the jobs that are available in Sunset Park, both at that site as well as Brooklyn Army Terminal and other spaces? And then the other question is like, will like NYC EDC have an administrative presence on site to provide services and support to tenants, as well as sort of engage with the community? And so just wondering if that's something that's built into this plan.
Cindy, those are 2 great questions. On the workforce development front, we put out that RFEI and then later an RFP a couple of years ago. This was the RFP that resulted in the Slow Factory lease, and that program was meant to deliver workforce development training. Since they are not moving in with us, that leaves us without a workforce development training. However, it's a core part of what we do, and it's a core part of our tenanting strategy and programming strategies to have workforce development. So I'm engaged in a number of conversations right now to understand how we can best deliver that, to ensure, again, that folks can get training, and then incredibly importantly, once they get that training, that we can place them into jobs and that there's a clear pathway from the training to the job. So it's a very current and active conversation for us right now, is to deliver workforce development. So that, yes, that is the plan. And then as far as EDC's presence, yeah, we don't have, we're pretty lean and mean team over here in our asset management group. We don't have much of a presence. However, that the intention is for that to change. We'd like to have more of our asset management staff and our engagement staff to be on site at the Brooklyn Army Terminal and in the future at Made in New York. So Waverly, who's here with us, will certainly be on site. She'll be your person there to connect with and ask questions about the campus. So yeah, the plan is that we'll have more active presence.
Thank you so much. And I think on the sort of employment front, just having something that's accessible to step into and feel like, oh, can I ask a question in person and talk to a human being is like so important, even if it's informational, so I appreciate your response and thinking on this.
Yeah, and it's lacking from our sites right now, and we do intend to change that.
I invite you to open a satellite office as a commercial lease on Fifth Avenue as a career center and dig right into the community. There's plenty of beautiful little storefronts that are just begging for.
I wonder why Fifth.
Well, my day job. I'm being a little biased. John, we'll come to you. I want to return to that written question that thankfully, and now I've forgotten who pointed it out, but thank you for the voice that told me that Damian Andrade had a question about whether or not the jobs on the New York campus prioritize Sunset Park residents over those from other neighborhoods. That's an age-old question about employment practices on property that the city owns collectively managed by EDC. Can you speak a little bit about how local job, following on Cindy's question, the local flavor of that question?
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, we've had this question before. It's really hard for us to hold jobs only for local residents. There's discrimination that's involved in that. So whenever we post jobs or any of our tenants, it's really our tenants who are posting the jobs. They can't necessarily say that you must live within this area, but we do use other programs to heavily market any job opportunities to local residents. So higher NYC is required of all of our tenants. It's part of the lease. At that, folks work through the Workforce One Center to market those job opportunities. We'd like to continue to work with Workforce One and with SBIDC to market job opportunities. And then, yes, building off of Cindy's point, so we want to make sure that anyone who lives in the neighborhood and lives nearby has all the right training and skills to access the jobs that are available on the campus. And so that's a big part of that Workforce One Center. And then, like I said, making sure that they're not just getting trained and doing a program, but there's also a pathway into the job directly from that training. So it is important to us, again, to make sure that this campus is going to be, an employment hub, and that neighbors can take advantage of that.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. And Damian's, raising his personal question around the idea of what constitutes discrimination when it comes to public job offerings, and that's something we might be able to discuss in another context. It's a worthy question because it comes up also with fair access to public housing and other questions. So maybe we'll explore that, but I'll table it for the moment. But Damian is expressing his concerns about that, and not to dismiss that question, but to hold it closely for future discussions. I want to do a couple things just for public interest here. I'll tick off a couple just in the quick. You used a lovely term, but not everybody's familiar with it with respect to Pier 6. What is live edge?
Oh, great question. So trying to think of another example that folks might know about, or Seema's here from our, do you want to define what a live edge is? So if you imagine I think, what is it, Pier 4 at Bush Terminal Piers Park might be considered a live edge, where it is open, accessible, there's riprap right there, there's natural marine habitat, there's water, but basically just it's not going to be removed from or far from access the way it's say that Pier 4 is, where you've got railings up, it's elevated from the water's edge. Seema, Andrew, do you want to add anything to the definition? These are my architecture and engineering colleagues, so they might have more formal definition.
No, you pretty much nailed it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
great.
As a layman, I define it as like a personal relationship with the water that's not interrupted by major pieces of architecture and fences and so on. And so when we speak about access to the water, sometimes it feels like looking at something from afar, even though it's access. And sometimes it feels like you're actually interacting with the harbor. And the latter, to me, seems, such an admirable goal. Can you speak just a moment about the imminent, hopefully, Brooklyn Greenway and its passage and its relationship to Bush Terminal Park, the Made in New York campus, and the First Avenue corridor, with or without the one-way pair accomplished?
I can, and I will say that this is also a topic that doesn't have a lot of satisfying resolution at this moment. And is that when the one-way pair is implemented along First and Second Avenue, that it will come with a bike lane. And the idea is that by doing those streetscape improvements and introducing the bike lane along First and Second Avenue, that it'll create a more safe environment from what we're seeing there right now. I think it's been really challenging to introduce dedicated or to just introduce bike lanes along First or really Second Avenue because of all of the truck traffic, and specifically because you've got loading docks that come right out into the street on both sides of the street. So that has been really challenging. From my perspective, I think having bike access is going to be a big part of making New York campus success. So I'm really interested in making sure that we can get bike lanes. I think the one-way pair is going to be the best way to do that. Design and I think funding is still very much TBD. And it's really a question for DOT as to when they're going to deploy that. But yeah, so that's how the one-way pair and the greenway.
Yeah, that's good. But once again, the family needs to get together, because one project might be 7 years in the future and one just a year and a half. And there we go. That's how we grow into things. Let me just clarify something you said earlier. You expressed general senses about properties wanting to be smart about their use of roofs. Is there any specific design element currently in scope about the roofs of the buildings that are first up that we should know about? I mean, I just want to make sure I kind of draw a line between what we all agree is great, what's likely if we can someday, and what's like on the books right now, somebody's using a hammer to make it happen.
I think there's a lot of consensus about what's great and what we would like to see. There's currently no plan to implement that, but a lot of interest and support.
Is the design and engineering being accomplished in a way that would accommodate future future implementation of green roofs, water sequestration, solar panels, whatever the case may be? But again, it's a matter of not building something out in a way that then precludes the possibility in the future.
I'm going to defer to my colleague Andrew, who is our construction guy.
I wouldn't say it precludes it. As Christine said, unfortunately, there's no current plan, but it's something that when we're done, we can definitely look at. And as per the idea to move forward with to get a greener building in the future.
Okay, I hear you. You got to ask. John, let's come back to you. We've all had a good round. I'm going to keep watching for chat and Q&A, and I do encourage any other attendee to raise your hands if you need to, and then we are going to move on to our second agenda item in about 2 or 3 minutes.
David, I have a resolution involving the Made in New York campus. Would this be the section of the meeting to introduce it, or would it be introduced later?
Later.
Okay, so then just a couple of quick questions. EDC, are all options for Pier 6 still on the table? If the community comes to you and says, we want to do a food farm there, or we want to do a 2-acre solar farm, or we want to do significant maritime shipping that will have access to Pier 6, is EDC willing to consider all options for Pier 6?
I mean, the design is still very much TBD, and I think we'll consider just about anything, but I think our ultimate priority, like I said earlier, is to make sure that this is an amenity to the campus that is going to support what visitors, what tenants, neighbors, and yes, the community want to see there. So I would encourage you and anyone who wants to come to any of these public engagement meetings, or anyone who wants to reach out to us to express their interest, let us know what you would like to see there. There's really, we'll consider it.
Building C, how much of Building C is manufacturing versus fashion?
Right now, it's not tenanted. So right now there's 0% that is either. So we'll be working with a leasing broker to get that leased up. And the intention again for this entire campus is to co-locate all of those uses. So to bring garment manufacturing, to bring light manufacturing, media production, film uses, advanced and innovative industries to this campus. And I think that will be co-located throughout this campus. So I can't say at this moment how Building C will shake out.
And the does EDC have any information from Steiner Studios about the local employees at the Navy Yard? So Steiner's large facility at the Navy Yard, does EDC have any data about how many local people work in Steiner Studios space? I understand Steiner is just builds the spaces. It's not making the movies itself. It's not making TV, but any data on how many local people work in those studio spaces at the Navy Yard?
I don't have that information.
You do not have, EDC does not have that data. Is that correct?
I don't believe so.
Okay, is that a cause for concern for EDC if this project is being pitched as a jobs creator to this community, but we don't know how many local people work at the Navy Yard? Where my mind goes is, well, we won't ever really have a good sense of how many local people would be working at the Steiner Studios facility here. What could you address that?
We've included within the Steiner lease obligations a number of programmatic ways of ensuring that there's local hiring. So like I said earlier, we can't discriminate in hiring. We can't only open it up to locals, but we can do things like we can heavily market to locals. But beyond that, I mean, Steiner will be working, and look, I know that there's a lot more to discuss about the Steiner project, and to be like totally clear, I didn't bring my Steiner notes, so I'm not really prepared to dig into Steiner, but there's apprenticeship programs, training programs, all kinds of programs to ensure that they are bringing in people and training them and getting them into jobs. And as much as we can do that, that will be focused on the Sunset Park community. Like I said, I'm trying to do everything I can to make sure that this campus is an amenity, both as an employment hub for folks who live nearby and as a place that they can go and engage in recreation and enjoy the waterfront.
Okay,
Very
thank
good.
you again.
As long as we're on the theme of employment, I know it's a public voice, but Jeremy, I think I can ask Damien. Damien, are you there? Can you hear me? And
yes, hello.
I think I've made it so you can unmute yourself. We're going to wrap up this segment and move on to our next agenda item, but I want a public voice in the room to just, go ahead and state your sensibility and your question. And we may not be able to answer it in this moment to your satisfaction, but I don't want to move on to another agenda item, kind of leaving you hanging. So go for it, Damien.
Yes, thank you. My name is Damien. I am a resident of Sunset Park, living on 45th and 3rd Avenue. And I just have, I guess, a few more questions. You say that you mentioned that you're targeting larger businesses and local businesses, but my question would be, what kind of larger businesses are you trying to work with or benefit for? Because that's what you have stated.
No, I said small businesses and larger businesses. So our tenants, for example, over at the Brooklyn Army Terminal, the smallest one takes up about 1,000 feet. The largest one takes up about 200,000 feet. And then there's everything in between. There's lots of 20,000 foot, 30,000 foot, 80,000 foot spaces that are taking up businesses, and they run the gamut. There's fashion manufacturers that are at the Brooklyn Army Terminal that are in about 70,000 feet. There's also more advanced manufacturers. There's also very traditional manufacturers like Lee Springs that manufacture springs. So there's all kinds of businesses. I didn't distinguish between large businesses and locals. It's large and small.
Okay, thank you. By any chance, since you say that the whole the buildings are kind of like you're going for like a green touch, is there any considerations to install solar panels within any of these buildings?
I mean, we would love to, and I think Andrew mentioned that we don't have plans right now to do that. I don't think our rooftop systems preclude us from doing that. We just don't have the plans right now. EDC certainly recognizes the value in having solar panels. I would love to bring solar panels here. I just don't have them in my plans at this time.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess this be my last question. Coming from residents, regarding Pier 6, it's kind of stating that it's kind of going to be touched almost like Pier 4. And I kind of don't agree that we don't need another parking spot, because in my definition is like parking means you're drawing out of residents from Sunset Park. And to be fair, that's kind of also contributing to the gentrification among my neighborhood that I kind of disagree with. And it's kind of also kicking out a lot of native Sunset Park residents. So I kind of see like parking and all of this stuff as a negative to the community, then rather than a benefit, it kind of benefits, I would say, like high income in a way towards like someone coming from a low income neighborhood. And regarding Pier 6, would you hold sessions for further like developments regarding community base, like hold different languages sessions, because Central Park is, have a lot of different languages, Spanish, there's also the Chinese community, the Asian population. Would there be different languages within any of the future meetings going forward with any of these constructions, and especially Pier 6? So if the community would like to have a different vision than a parking lot, would you be okay with listening to the community, I would say?
Yes.
Good question and good answer. Thank you. Damien, thank you for contributing those questions. And I know you were typing madly in the background, so it was just so much better to hear your voice and get it in the room. Thank you so much. Now we do have another agenda item regarding the percent for the arts. I think we still have issues with access by some folks who are offshore. DC and EDC, are you all able to do what you needed to do tonight without the folks who were mentioned earlier who were having access issues?
So we do have the artist who is going speaking to the presentation. It's a very modern day configuration. However, I don't know. Wait, actually, wow! I think I can zoom in on this, and you can see their face. You won't see any of us in the room anymore, but you will, or should be able to at least see the artist.
This looks kind of like a conceptual piece. Honestly, if I saw this in a gallery, I'd stop and look twice. Go for it.
And then I can also closer.
Valentina, can you try speaking so everyone can hear you?
Good evening.
Oh, can you hear her?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
David, do you want to introduce them?
Yeah, so good evening. I'm David Mandel from the Department of Cultural Affairs. And thanks for all of your help behind the scenes, and Team EDC who figured out this hack to get Valentina and Claudio from Italy to be able to be heard and seen and to give their presentation. When we get to their part, I'll move their slides while they speak, and we'll do our best to sync up. And I think it's going to turn out just great. So thanks for your help with that. But before we get into that, I'll just give a quick refresher on the Percent for Art program and kind of how we got to where we are. And then we'll bring our artists on to show you the good part, to show you the conceptual design. I'm going to share my screen.
I have to give you permission.
Yes, may I please have permission to share?
You can share it now.
Okay. Can you see my screen now?
We can.
Okay, great. So again, good evening. My name is David Mandel. I work for the Public Art Unit at the Department of Cultural Affairs. And tonight, we're going to share an update on Bush Terminal Made in New York campus, the Percent for Art Commission, with artists Ornagi and Prestinari, who are with us tonight, Valentina and Claudio. But as I said, first, let me give you a refresher on Percent for Art and the process for commissioning one of our projects. Percent for Art, how we define a successful piece of public art, is the intersection of community, public space, and the art. So we think about the public space, the design of a project, the physical space, an artist and their practice, as well as the site-specific community location where a project is going to take place. The Percent for Art program was established in 1982 by Local Law 65, which states that 1% of capital funds for newly constructed or reconstructed city-owned buildings must be allocated towards a work of art. The image on the left, you see the dedication of the first Percent for Art project. with then Mayor Ed Koch in the foreground. And on the right in 2021, you can see the same site that's in East Harlem, Art Park by Jorge Luis Rodriguez. It's a piece called Growth. And this is an example just to show you how these are site-specific permanent installations. So they're commissioned in mind that they will be in the environment, in the landscape, in the setting for many years to come. Percent for Art commissions can be in a variety of spaces and locations, including courthouses, parks, cultural institutions, but some maybe unlikely places like police precincts, fire stations, plazas, streetscapes, many schools, health centers, and et cetera, and sites such as the project we're hearing about tonight. Our selection process is divided between two types of meetings, two panel meetings. We call it first panel meeting and second panel meeting. At the first panel meeting, what we do is we pull together a pool of artists where we show previous works, and together the panel reviews the portfolios of these artists, selecting ranked alternates and finalists to be invited to create presentations. Artists are then invited and attend an orientation, and a couple months later are invited to present their site-specific proposal. We usually have about 4 finalists for a project. After discussion and voting, then artist is commissioned. Who is on the panel? Our panel consists of 2 types of panelists: voting and advisory. Our voting panelists are considered, we have representative from Cultural Affairs, from the design agency, from the design team. And we also have 3 representatives of the public who are knowledgeable about public art, the project, and the community where the project will be located. So for example, for this project, we had representatives from Brooklyn Arts Council. We always have an artist who has completed a Percent for Art project, who's gone through the process and understands what it takes. We had an artist from Brooklyn who has a piece participate in this project. And then we have advisory panelists who consist of representatives from the Public Design Commission, other agency staff. We reach out to the city elected officials, the borough president's office, council member's office, and the community board, asking for any volunteers or representatives, local organizations, community groups, and of course, just the general public. Here's just a kind of quick timeline overview of this particular commission. Way back, let's see, October 15th of 2020 was when the project kicked off, was the first time Percent for Art presented to the community board with an announcement about the project, highlighting potential locations, asking for suggestions for artists and panelists. And then after a period of outreach, we reached out to about 80 different local arts organizations and artists and community stakeholders. We're asking for these suggestions. The first panel meeting took place on November 5th, 2020. That's when I mentioned the artist pool was reviewed, narrowed down to a short list of finalists. After an orientation, selection panel 2, where the site-specific proposals were heard. And then following the artist selection, who you'll hear from tonight, we come back to the community board to share with you the conceptual design. And this is a milestone that we come to you before the Public Design Commission, which reviews the conceptual design. So what you're going to see tonight, nothing has been built yet, nothing's been fabricated. It's just the design. This is an important milestone to share with you the progress and the vision for this project. We ask for a letter of support from the community. In the spring is when we are targeting to go to the Public Design Commission for a review, which is a public hearing. From there, getting the approval to proceed is when more specific schematics are drawn up, and then getting a permission to fabricate and then eventually install the project. So that's where we are, how we got here, and that's all I have about Percent for Art. Now I'm going to just switch over to the artist presentation. So excuse me, flipping around screens. Let's see. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So Valentina, can you see this?
No.
I don't know how we'll do that.
I don't know if you can see it, or if you just want to do your presentation, you could say next slide, or I'm going to listen carefully to you and I'll advance the slides while you speak.
Okay, now yes. Okay, thank you. Okay. Good evening. We are Ornaghi and Prestaghi, an Italian duo with an architecture and industrial design background. Our research has a strong conceptual component. We always reflect on the theme of the relationship. From one side, the relationship between man and object, and how this relationship is linked to the history of material, design, artisanal and industrial production techniques. So in general, we consider different aspects of material culture. From the other side, we investigate the human condition, so the relationship with the other. We try to create works that can put in resonance the interiority through intimate and poetic language. Working as a couple means we can create works within a process of continuous dialogue and sharing. In fact, the final form of the work is always the result of a dialogue between us, a dialogue with the space, a dialogue with the soul and the history of the host place. The search for a dialogue with the public. We put together different figurative references taken from the history of the specific site, but also from the history of design, art, and architecture. We would like to begin this presentation by introducing some of these works. Next. Next. Philemon and Vouches is a permanent work that was commissioned from the public part of a new district of Milan under construction. It's a site-specific work. We were interested in creating a dialogue with the new twin skyscraper in the center of the area. It's a dialogue between old and new. We imagine to embrace columns looking at the new architecture. They have become an invitation to hospitality and welcomes in the new area of the city, as the Greek myth mentioned in the title also underlined. The work Eclipse is a monument to the human desire to overcome one's loneliness through the encounter with the other. The work was made a material present in the host context, and is characterized by the overlapping of three blocks. The sensuality of the figure tries to revive the cloister of a disused cinema. The decorative motif is taken from the Lombard decoration present in the city. Next. Chonko is an animated sculpture made of wood. It's a puppet inspired by Pinocchio, composed of abstract pieces. The work was designed for an exhibition in an old theater. The wooden modules are crossed by a pressure steel wire. A motor mechanism allows the sculpture to fall, breaking down into parts and then reassembling itself in an always different way. Next. The title of this work is Abito, a word that means both dress and habit, the place they live in. The workwear as part of one's identity, we duplicated our overall with a similar and made one in wood and embroidery. Next. The proposal is for the Bush Terminal mini campus situated in the multicultural area of Sunset Park in Brooklyn. Next. The restore site has different places, as you can see on the map. Next. So we have designed 5 art pieces to create a route inside the area, and invite people who live and work there to walk around and discover the narrative of every sculpture. Next. 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 Our proposal for Bush Terminal Campus is about testimony. Next. Each sculpture is made of a series of concrete blocks with shapes influenced by the sewing pattern of its costumes. Each costume represents the multicultural identity of the neighborhood since the past, but also the possible future of the area connected to garment manufacturing. Next. Next. Another theme is dialogue and sharing. In particular, we are interested in reflecting on the dialogue between different cultural identities and how to find a stable balance in the instability cultural process of constant constructions of melting pot identity. We were fascinated by how Sunset Park different ethnic groups on the one hand are integrating, contaminating their culture, and on the other hand, they feel the need to perform in annual parades with a national costume to highlight their roots. We start from the idea of breaking down the different national costumes to put them in dialogue with each other. We started from the sewing patterns that are the basis of each costume. Next. Next. We have created a series of models from all the sewing patterns. Through the models, we will generate abstract construction in balance. These are first sketches we start from. The various pieces integrate with each other, generating unitary construction. Next. Next. We talk of relating the concept of cultural identity with that of individual identity through fingerprint. We are interested in highlighting man's primitive need to leave a testimony of his own passage. On a technical level, we like the idea that in sculpture there is the integration of the hand of the artist and the craftsman. Next. Here, there are two examples of past works where fingerprints appear. We imagine that fingerprints on plasticine can be reported as a texture in some parts of the sculpture. Next. Next. We imagine also the possibility of engaging Sunset Park community through workshop with children. Each child can leave their own individual mark on the plasticine we will use to generate the sculpture texture, or we can study activity on the theme of identity and how to create a balance with different shape of models. Let's imagine involving some public school classes in Sunset Park. Next. This is our proposal using pigmented concrete and a golden metallic line. Next. The golden line joins all the pieces, putting them in dialogue and creates unity. The technique of mosaic on concrete is taken from this architectural detail on the right by Carlos Scarpa. The shape on the dashed line is inspired by a sartorial teaching. Next. Pigmented concrete is largely used in contemporary architecture and outdoor design. The pigment is added to the cement during mixing, so it's resistant over time. The concrete we'll choose will be a material with high performance characteristics. Next. This is a hypothetical color palette for pigmented concrete. Each piece of sewing pattern will be a different color. We are interested that the tone of the color refers to the saturated and industrial colors. Next. It's possible texture by inserting relief inside the formworks that will contain the cast cement mixture. Next. No, sorry. Here example. Yes. Here example of fingerprint texture imprinted on concrete, previously created by cast. By taking advantage of the possibility of giving relief shape to the concrete through formworks, we can also create scaffold deterrent to generate discontinuity below horizontal surfaces. Next. For the Bush Terminal Plaza, we imagine a sculpture in this position. Next. The shape refers to a trilytic construction, not to height. The sculpture is central to the square, and part of it can be used as a bench. Next. Concrete modus frame, part of the landscape. From the sculpture, it's possible to admire both the waterfront and the activity in the square. Here, the position of the sculpture on the waterfront promenade. On the waterfront, the modules are arranged to form a more monumental sculpture that stands out toward the sky. The sculpture is also visible from afar and becomes a point of reference for people. A part of the sculpture can be used as a seat to meet friends and admire the landscape. In the mini lane, sculptures are distributed in a point-like manner to emphasize the direction imparted by trucks. Sculptures are integrated with the site and are smaller in size than the others on the waterfront. Each sculptural body appears on a human scale. The three sculptures are like characters who inhabit the space. All sculpture in this proposal for Bush Terminal Campus can be touched by people to experience material and texture. We study low ceilings for this artwork. In fact, concrete will be covered with an anti-graffiti finish to avoid graffiti, and this finishing will be checked every year and restore. She can restore, and the golden metal line will be previously covered with an epoxy resin, which is very durable. So thanks for your attention. Have you got some questions?
Thank you for your presentation under difficult circumstances. So Grace under fire there. Can we make a few brief questions on the topic? I'll lead just what is the relationship of the timeline for the installation of the Percent for Arts project and the general completion of the other project elements on the Made in New York campus? Are they following on? Are they simultaneous or following on after some delay?
We're trying to align it with the opening of the campus. I mean, so the site work is scheduled to complete next, can you hear us? It's scheduled to complete April of next year. So we are trying to align it at the same time. Sorry. I'm sorry, you can't see me. I'm Seema.
Oh, no, we're catching just a little corner of you. So you're in there. You're in there. Thank you very much. For the moment, I know we have a little work to do, but I want to make sure that we have just an answer to any immediate questions. I'm going to defer to our to Julio, who has his hand up, and then Catherine Walsh.
Hi, good evening, and I wanted to echo David's comment about I appreciate your grace in during the technical difficulties. I very much appreciate the presentation and the conversation on the presentation on the artwork. I wanted to clarify what John raised in the chat, what you're seeking from this board, and also wanted to clarify, was the artwork that was presented or the specific artwork that was presented in the presentation, was that the very specific design that would be seeing, like for what would it be seeing along the waterfront, or would it be open to change? Because one thing I just would like to raise is, and what you mentioned in the presentation is, Sunset Park is a very, rich and diverse community, and I just would like it to reflect that in the artwork. So I just wanted to see if that was be the artwork specifically.
Well, I can answer the first part of your question. This is David from Cultural Affairs. So tonight, what we do is kind of at this moment in the time of our project is when we present this update to the community board, we ask for a letter of support, simply that, supporting the project in the general sense, that you support the artist's conceptual design, what they're presenting to you tonight. It's not necessarily like a hard approval, but it's a letter of your support for it. And of course, if there is any feedback, such as like you have some comments, this is a great time for us to hear what you're thinking and to see, to take that feedback and see how it could be applied to the project as applicable. So, yeah.
Very good. Catherine?
I think I had a similar question, which was just specifically around the connection back to the community and either the history, the working waterfront history, or Sunset Park. How can people, art inspires and also can connect us to, current, past, and future. And I'm just trying to understand how this design connects to that. And then I did miss a couple of minutes in the beginning, so I apologize, but it's the Made in New York campus. So if you could again connect like the artists, what the New York connection is as well. So the neighborhood connection and then the connection to New York. I don't expect that we all have to use tonight as an art history or art like class, engagement, but at least the way it's being described to us doesn't kind of reflect back the connection to the community, the history, at this point in terms of the context that I'm getting. And maybe that's something that you can take on as feedback from the board, at least at this initial stage.
David, maybe can I ask, can you describe in the Percent for Arts process and where we are in the process steps, and especially because you mentioned engagement with local youth at this late stage in the process, to what extent would engagement with school kids or other folks in the local community from this point forward affect the outcome of the actual shape of the works?
Sure. And I mean, I think I would let Valentina directly address that. So like I mentioned before, what you're seeing is the conceptual design. And as the artist suggested, that there's kind of room for engagement and community participation, especially they targeting school children. And so Valentina, do you want to talk a little bit about, how those workshops and engagements will, impact the art?
Yes, we are interested in create an engagement with children, especially because we are interested in educational workshop, and we think that involving children could be a good idea or create a kind of action and curiosity to visit the sculpture and to feel also a participation and a contribution to the piece, and also we imagine that children can talk about this workshop and about this sculpture, for example, also with their parents, and maybe invite parents to visit the sculpture too, for example. And first, we talked about a possible practical workshop based from imprints texture, and the idea was to create these imprints with children, and then use this sample for the final texture into the real sculpture. But in the case that this process will be too complex, because, for example, when there was COVID, it was impossible to do this. So we also talk about the possibility of create another activity, for example, a workshop with children based on the theme of identity. For example, we can realize an activity book and create also practical exercise and yes, minimum type of culture with children to reflect on the main theme of the project. But about this, we are open to study more in deep the workshop in the next pages. But this is the concept.
Thank you for that explanation. Let's go back to Catherine and then John. Those are the hands I see up.
Sorry, sorry to do a follow-up. Because I'm just looking, it's the Made in New York campus. So I just keep coming back to the connection, and I'm not hearing a response, like either the artists themselves, like the connection to New York, or how it's the art itself is engaged. Like you're talking about having the art and having young people engage with it, but the art itself, like Sunset Park, the working waterfront, the history, the past, and just to be like very like, it's the Made in New York campus. So is this team, what's the connection between the sourcing of the team that's working on this as, supporting New York arts community? Just, I don't know who I'm supposed to ask that question to. It's supposed to go to EDC.
No, I definitely defer to DCLA in partnership with the artists, and maybe David can speak to the selection panel and maybe some of those conversations that led to this artist being selected. Maybe that could be helpful for this group, but not sure if David has that history.
Yeah, just if you are coming to kind of look for board support, these are the types of questions. That's why we're asking.
Well, let me think of the best way to answer that. With so our panel, as part of the process, we show a diverse range of artists, both in terms of their styles, their materiality, their kind of a practice. We commissioned a diverse range of artists in terms of their cultural background, place of origin, interpretation. So diverse in every sense. After curating that diverse pool, we share that with the panel who reviews that, select a short list of artists to present, and from there make a selection. So as I mentioned before, the outreach for suggestions for artists as well as for people to attend the panel come directly through the community as well. These artists were selected by New Yorkers and for their proposal, which resonated with the panel members, hopefully with you as well. I mean, I heard from them their references to the local history, local community in terms of multiculturalism, looking at different costuming, using those as abstracted shapes, referencing the garment industry and that manufacturing process, creating places for contemplation, for seating, for experiencing the art. Also involving children, incorporating the tactility and workshops for engaging in that way. But I don't want to speak for the artists, but I will share these slides as kind of a follow-up so you could dig into them a little bit more, learn more about it. I'm sorry if it was difficult to hear a little bit, but tomorrow I'll follow up with the community board to share you the entire slideshow. But I don't know if there's anything else, Valentina, you just wanted to offer about kind of how you see the connection to the community in this piece or not?
We try to study a little bit the characteristic of Sunset Park area, which is very characterized with multi-ethnicity, and also the area seems divided in cultural district, and also in the past there is this very strong melting pot, and yes, so we try to create a kind of balance of this possible relation through people. And from the other side, we are interested in material culture, and so we were also inspired by the possible future of the area, and we like the idea that the sculpture could become a kind of iconic symbol of that place. And so we like the idea that people in the area can empathize also with the sculpture, with the tactility, yes, with playing with the sculpture, like sitting, like meet friends in that point. And yes, we like the idea of create yes, a kind of emotional connection. If I explain, if I answer.
Thank you. No, thank you. It's instructive to listen. I see two hands up, John Santora and Karen Rolnick.
Briefly, I appreciate that there was a process followed here. I believe it was a very sincere process, and I appreciate the art that's being shown. This is the first time I've been able to comment on this as a committee member. My concern is that, as far as I can tell, the artists themselves are not connected to Sunset Park. And while I did see, this is similar to what Katie and what Julio was saying, there did seem to be some reference to perhaps Latin American culture and some of the garments that were shown, but there doesn't seem, in terms of the artistic output, there doesn't seem to be much of a connection to Latin cultures or to the Asian communities that are here. And I think that any artwork that goes into this community should be directly connected either to local artists or quite clearly to local culture, so that when people see it, they're going to feel an emotional connection to it and feel like they're being represented. And Damian Andrade left a similar question. I also just want to say for the record, because it's come up in different ways, Made in New York campus, this must be said, the community of Sunset Park did not pick that name. That was a name given to this project by EDC. Minnie Lane was given to the project by EDC. As far as I'm aware, there was no community consultation on either of those names, which is part of the, I think it's symbolic of larger issues with the lack of community involvement in creating this project. But I think when it comes down to the artists, we're seeing that also, even though, again, the artists are very sincere and the process is sincere. That's my comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you, John, and thank you also for reflecting Damian's comments in the chat. I think you captured them better than I would try to recap them. Karen?
Yeah, I have to, I think that a lot of us are approaching this in a way that's not useful. I think that what we're talking about, a lot of us, is we want to represent our diverse community through this artwork. And what happens when you do something like that is you end up with something that looks like the seal of the city of New York, which shows, you know, this aspect and that aspect and the other aspect, but it's nothing you would want to hang on your living room wall or have as a public artwork, you know. And I think that what we really want to do is make it relatable to all the people who live here as opposed to representative. I think that that's just too literal. Artwork can be abstract and be beautiful. It doesn't have to represent specifically, you know, Latin or Chinese or Asian, or it can just, so long as it's relatable, that's fine. I think we just maybe need to step back and not be quite so literal and want it to be representative. I think we should rather just make it be something we can all relate to. That's all I got to say.
Thank you for that. Thank you. I'm going to acknowledge something that's been written and then go to Cindy Vandenbosch. Lynette Lopez writes, and I'm just going to read it. In the event that you move forward with this artwork, could you clarify what the plan would be for that retouching of it every 10 to 15 years, as mentioned in the presentation? For example, who specifically is responsible for securing this on a timely basis? Is this some standard for public art? That might speak to process and maintenance to DCA and EDC.
Well, this project will fall under the purview of EDC once it's commissioned. And with most of our projects out in the public realm, you know, when being developed or as they're being reviewed and advised, they are looked at in terms of their materiality and fabrication and you know, sustainability and upkeep durability. So it is common that, you know, minimal maintenance is obviously what's needed. So we look at artists, you know, not to develop that aren't working with, let's say, like proprietary materials that are like one-off, could never be replicated again or repaired in such a manner that are too expensive to replace or keep up. So I think Valentina was giving you some examples of how they're using materials and processes that are easy to maintain and repair as needed, and you know, on an ongoing or, you know, long-term basis. This is definitely something you might find interesting to hear. Like if you would attend the PDC hearings, they definitely dig into the materiality of these pieces and the long-term maintenance as well. So appreciate, you know, you thinking of that and bringing that up. But yeah, that's definitely an important factor in creating a piece like this.
Thank you, Cindy. So we're going to go to Cindy. Cindy will be our last sort of Q&A moment as this part of the presentation. I think we've had a good, thorough pass with a variety of ideas, opinions, and observations and questions.
Hey, David, real quick, I just Just wanted to kind of point and somewhat call out that the artist has said thank you after everybody has given some feedback. I think that's being lost. So I just wanted to kind of communicate that.
Oh, thank you for mentioning that. There is this layer that we've added of technology. So if we've missed the comments of the artists themselves, please, anyone, just jump right in. That you know, no conversation like this is worthy without the artists themselves at the center of it. Cindy, please.
Yeah, so I just wanted to disclose, since I'm asking a question here and there might be a vote on this, that I have a professional relationship with EDC, so I would be voting present if I'm able to stay for that part of the meeting. But I just wanted to thank you for this thoughtful presentation, sort of building on the last question. So if there's an instance, God forbid, you know, this is New York, of graffiti or gum or whatever it might be getting on this sculpture, this work of art, is it my understanding that EDC would be responsible for that? So that's the first thing. And the second thing goes back to just the review process. And I heard it mentioned that this is more of a DCA question. What were there people on the panel who were artists from the community board district? Were there artists? I know we have a robust community of artists here. Were there any people from the actual community that sat on? I heard that there were artists from Brooklyn, but I'm just wondering, were there artists from Sunset Park or Windsor Terrace? And in the future, if there wasn't, like in the future, how could we ensure that we have that representation, since it seems like that's something that's been raised in different ways. But otherwise, I just want to thank you for the thought and time that the artists have put in, and the folks at DCA to this process. Thank you.
Sure.
So just to answer oh, sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Go ahead. You can cover the first part and I'll cover the second part.
Sounds good. So Cindy, just to close up the first question, yes, EDC is responsible for after the completion after the artwork is installed. EDC is the one who is going to maintain the actual art component.
And I just want to add, there is anti-graffiti treatment on these sculptures, so that would not be a concern. That is something the artist is making sure.
David, second part.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to conclude discussion and observation and question on this part of the presentation, unless our colleagues from EDC, DCLA, or the artists have a concluding remark they want to offer.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to address the second part of the question, which was about, you know, we don't necessarily track the address of every person that's on the panel, but we do look for people who are, as I mentioned before, all of our panels require at least 3 professionals who are knowledgeable of the neighborhood where the project is taking place, kind of the local arts landscape in the area, as well as public art in general. So sometimes you might say, oh, they have like a Brooklyn purview more so than a Sunset Park purview, perhaps. But as part of our process, when we do come to the community board, that's when we do ask for suggestions for panelists, for artists. So I guess, you know, we keep moving forward with that, where every time we initiate a project, we ask the local arts organizations, we ask the community board to refer people to us. So please keep doing that. And just to say, if you have artists that you feel like would be excellent for a public art project, we have an artist directory where artists submit materials to be considered citywide on an ongoing basis. We don't pick Brooklyn artists for Brooklyn projects, you know, things like that. We commission citywide artists internationally. On our website, there's a link, and I could share that tomorrow when I send you a follow-up email, just how artists can submit materials to be considered for all upcoming projects on an ongoing basis. And an artist doesn't even necessarily have to have had a major public piece before. There's a little bit more information about that. So there's definitely ways you can you know, get involved as a panelist or by cultivating artists as a pipeline to be involved in public art in the program.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for bringing me back to that. I've been looking at the clock and wanting to be respectful of everyone's time, and I was being disrespectful of Cindy's thoughtful question and your good answer. But do offer me a point of information before we go to move for a call to offer a vote on the letter of support. Some of us on this, I've been through a DCA, Percent for the Arts jury process in Red Hook some 8 years ago. But for everyone else, like when you say the process, right, that's already pretty packed and a lot of people don't understand. And you did describe it in some detail at the onset. But how many of these do you do in a year? How many have you done in the last 5 years? I want people to get a sense of the fact that my perception is this is a developed practice on the part of DCA. It's not a new and sort of information thing, but give us a sense of just context of how many of projects are accomplished under this
Yeah, there have
program.
been about 385% projects since 1982. There's about 138 projects that are currently in progress right now.
Okay, that's
and we have a very small staff.
I'm always trying to listen to this like somebody who's just walking in the room cold and saying, "What? What is that? What is art?" We'll do that at another meeting. And then this has been an attenuate process. I'll notice that timeline did start as far back as 2020. So some of us, myself, I just, that wasn't a time when I could sit in. So I appreciate that this has been strung out over time. With that, we'll conclude discussion and question unless EDC has a last comment.
I guess I'll just say, we really appreciate the community board's time as always. It's always a pleasure to be here. That's all.
Great. So I'll open it to the floor if someone wants to move. Now, let's be clear, and let me make sure I'm being clear. If we have a motion and a vote, it's about supporting this in concept, right? I do not believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I do not believe that the community board is called upon to vote thumbs up or thumbs down on a particular work of art. The works of art that we saw represented were conceptual designs in a part of a process. So help me make sure I'm framing my request for the committee to make a motion and vote. We're voting on favor of the concept. Correct?
Correct, David. You are voting in favor of the concept. And just to be clear, there will be further points of more opportunities to engage once the process moves along.
Okay, good to know. So, committee. Do I have a motion to offer a letter of support for the concept of this work as you've seen it this evening? Karen, I see your hand up.
Would this be a second or a motion?
A motion, I suppose.
Okay, I move to.
Second.
Cynthia seconds. Thank you very much. So we have a motion on the floor and a second, as I described, for the community board to offer a letter of support, a brief letter of support in favor of the concept that we were presented. May I take a vote in terms of, I don't think we can do a roll call per se, or how should we do this? May I offer, can we do this by general assent, or Cindy has already acknowledged that she is a present by obligation?
And point of order, is this a committee only vote? I'm not on the committee. So is this a committee vote, or is it a committee vote, or are you opening it to all board members who are present?
I am open to my board chair or Jeremy informing us of what's the best. My personal preference is that everybody present vote, but unless there's a strict obligation that it's committee members only.
If you do unanimous consent, you just need to say except for Cindy, who's voting present, if you wanted to do.
Yeah. Are there any other considerations, abstentions, or people who need to vote present just before we even vote? Can we get that in the air?
Hi, David, Julio. That's fine. I'll leave it at the preference of the chair of the committee. Just know I will be abstaining from the vote.
Okay, so we have an abstention from Julio Pena. We have a present from Cindy Vanden Bosch. with those two items held by general assent, does the committee and all board members present supporting the committee vote in favor of this idea of a letter of support for the concept? And I'm going to leave plenty of time in chat by raising of hands or just verbally for anyone to vote no.
David, I just wanted to suggest that you just do the committee members
Yeah.
that are on the Economic Development Committee, not just all board members present for the voting.
Okay. All right. So committee members.
Point of order, the bylaws specifically say that any community board member who is present at 50% or more of the committee meetings on that topic are eligible to vote. So that would be the only meeting on this topic. So any community board members who are present would be eligible to vote according to the bylaws.
Well, that's a point of order. Yes. Okay.
That's helpful, Karen.
I hear you. I hear you. Thank you, Karen. Cultural memory, cultural wisdom. Wait, Karen, you're in two screens. It's amazing. Still, is anyone, I saw a text, I want to acknowledge it. Is anyone deeply attached to a roll call vote on this? Is anyone?
Point of order, point of order. I think you have to do a roll call vote because someone put in the chat that they would vote no. So since it's not unanimous consent, you shift it over to roll call. As I understand it.
Okay, I'm learning on this point. I'm learning with everyone else, but Julio has his hand up, so that might be our voice of authority.
I was just gonna say, you can do a show of hands and then just mark the yays and nays and any abstentions or present.
Okay. We've got a present, we've got a no, we've got an abstention.
Sorry, David, you have to just say all those in favor.
Right, all those in favor, please raise your hand. It could be a literal hand in a video, or it could be a raised hand on a screen.
David, maybe we should call out the names to make sure that we have them.
Yeah, Jeremy, go for it. I took more time saving time. Sorry. So, Jeremy.
I see up, or Karen Rolnick, Cynthia Gonzalez. And that's it.
Myself, I just added.
David Estrada, Sam Sierra. So I see 5 hands up.
Okay. Great. Would everyone who just voted lower their hand? Sam, oh, great. Let's ask for no votes. John, I saw you in text. Let me see you on hand. Great. Very good.
I see Catherine Walsh. I see John Santori. I see Leonette Lopez.
Very good. And I'll entertain any verbal, if we've missed anyone. My big fear in this is not a perfect process in a Zoom setting. If I've missed anyone who feels that they did not vote yes, no, present, or abstain, speak or text. Very good. Okay. Jeremy, would you agree with me that my count is 5 in favor, 2 no, 1 present, and 1 abstention?
I had 3 no's.
3 no's. I'm sorry, no, that was a 3, my handwriting. The 5, 3, 1, and 1. Thank you. So the resolution passes. Thank you all.
You had one more no that went in the chat.
Oh, show me. Let me see. In chat? Oh, I mean Q&A. Sorry.
Hector Gonzalez.
Hector, thank you, thank you. 5 yes, 4 no, 1 present, and 1 abstention. Very good. Thank you all.
David?
Mm-hmm.
No position achieved a majority in that case.
Oh, because of the present, yeah.
No, because of the abstention.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
could we explain what that means? If there's no majority, what would that mean?
Is 50% plus one. There were 10 votes that were made. There were 5 yeses, 4 nos, 1 abstention. No position held majority.
So can
One,
we
one
clarify?
abstention and 1 present, right?
I'm sorry?
One abstention from Julio and 1 present from Catherine, or from Cindy.
That does not count as a vote.
Great, okay. So the motion
The
does not
motion fails.
fails.
Just to clarify, this will still be brought to the board on Wednesday for discussion, and it'll still be brought to a vote.
David, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that yes, Julio, that it will still be presented on Wednesday. Maybe it will be helpful. I definitely understand that the committee has decided not to give a lot of support, but I think it would be helpful for DCLA's conversation with PDC if maybe David or Jeremy, you all could send maybe a couple of bullets that would help DCLA articulate the community's opinion or reasoning for not supporting this project. I think it would really help the overall conversation. As I said, I believe that DCLA in partnership with the artists and of course EDC will be back to present more or have another conversation with folks. So I think in ensuring that conversation is extremely productive and really impactful, I think it would be really helpful if we had at least 2 or 3 bullets from the community board to really clearly identify on why you all have chosen to withhold the support for the country.
I think that would be more appropriate after Wednesday, once the full board gets the opportunity to discuss and perhaps share their opinion for or against.
Okay, I appreciate that, Jeremy.
I'll just add that I'll send you the full presentations tomorrow morning. Yeah, whatever, if your letter of support, we'd appreciate the reasons why it's not supported specifically, so that we can share that with PDC and look at that feedback.
Very good, thank you. Thank you all, EDC team, DCLA. If the artists are still on the line, Lord knows what hour it is where they are. Thank you.
And I believe it should be after 2 a.m., David.
I know. Oh boy, I've been on those. I appreciate that, the time and the attention in any case.
Okay, thanks so much, all. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Very good. So for board members present and committee members, may we have a motion to adjourn?
David, I have resolutions. I have a resolution and I also have 2 new business items.
Okay.
Should I begin with the resolution?
Why don't you tick off the new business items and then we'll go from there.
Okay, the new business item, first one, so, and yes, I understand that it's late. I have been up all day too. I'm very tired, but this project is enormous and it's super important, I think, to talk about it, but also things that this committee has talked about before. We talked at the last meeting about doing a meeting to set agenda items for the future. Based on my reading, there were 3 members of this committee, myself, Antoinette Martinez, and Amel, who supported such a meeting. I received an email earlier this month from Danny Murphy saying that meeting could be held after this meeting. So I'm asking the board if people in this room would still support that. And if so, could we hold an agenda setting meeting where people can bring their suggestions and we can have a democratic engagement about what the committee should discuss going forward. So can we hold that meeting, and can we hold that meeting as soon as possible? Can we perhaps set an approximate date or open it up to possible approximate dates either this month or in early May?
I'm actually going to answer that question. John, David's not the chair of this committee, he's the vice chair, so I don't think it would be appropriate for him to answer that question on the chair's behalf. The chairs of the committee set the agenda, and they're more than happy to take agenda items with committee members, but I don't think it would be appropriate for David to answer that question on behalf of the chair who's not present tonight.
Okay, so completely understand. Thank you, Julio, for that point. So the chair sent me an email saying that an agenda setting meeting could be held after tonight's meeting because there wasn't space in this agenda. So what would be the process to follow up with that to see if in fact the chair will hold an agenda setting meeting? And if so, when?
I would follow up with the chair of the committee, Dan Murphy, via email to follow up regarding that email.
Okay, so I'm gonna send an email to Dan Murphy and I'm gonna ask on the record for Dan Murphy and to send a response to the entire committee to say to everyone if he does or does not support the holding of that meeting, and if so, when. And if anyone wants to comment on that, please feel free to do so. I think it's incredibly important that we discuss together what the priorities are. I'm also going to ask again for this committee to establish an email list. This can be done by Google Groups. Email lists, email addresses can be protected. There are many members of the committee that are not here. We must talk, in my opinion, between meetings. An email list is an easy way to do that. It's free. It's very easy to set up. I volunteer to help set it up with the board. If anybody supports that, please feel free to indicate your support. But I think the alternative is we just have no communication, on the record communication in between meetings, and that's going to undermine the effectiveness of this committee. So I don't know if there's any discussion of that or anybody supports creation of an email list. It's something I've suggested for a long time. Leonette is saying she's open to an email list. Gabino says he supports an email list. What I can do is I can follow up with the chair and I can note that 3 members of the committee support the creation of an email list, if that's appropriate. Cynthia
has her hand up.
Yeah, I support the creation of an email list because I remember in all the time that I have been on the board, we always had the address and the phone numbers of all of the members, and I haven't seen that for years. So, I mean, I'm the chair of a committee, and I don't really know how to outreach people, because I don't have their email. So I do support creating an email list and also the agenda setting meetings, because I think that helps when you're, putting together a meeting to know what people wanna address.
So John,
Okay.
you'll communicate that to Dan?
So I personally, if it's okay, I'll send an email to Dan. I'm sorry, I see Karen's hand is up.
I was just going to mention that Dan has reached out to all of us and shared a Google document and asked us to submit our suggestions. So,
right, would that prevent, in your opinion,
communicating with all of us?
Sure. Is that a reason not to have an agenda setting meeting or create an email list?
I think that we should. It's a good suggestion, and I think that the chair has to run the committee.
Cynthia, is your hand still up or from last time, or do you have a new question or comment? Oh, I think her hand went right down. Okay, John, so what I'm hearing is you'll communicate to Dan, you'll reflect the tone of this meeting, you'll reiterate your requests. I'll state my sensibility is that, this can all be handled in regular order. That's my thing. I'm concerned about communication that shapes the actions of this committee or any community board action that's not taking place in the public setting on the record. You mentioned on the record, and I think that's a good theme. Are there any other comments from committee members? Are there any other comments from board members?
Well, I'm sorry, I have the resolution. I apologize.
The resolution, okay?
Yeah. The resolution is in the chat. I'll be as brief as possible. You can see the resolution right there. The Made in New York campus, again, for transparency, I do not support the project for a variety of reasons. Here is my background information for anyone who's interested in looking at where my information comes from, but I am not asking the committee to take that position. The Made in New York campus was announced in February of 2017. None of the elected officials, with the exception of Eric Adams, who are currently representing the community, were in office in February 2017. We have an entirely new slate of elected officials. Those elected officials have not taken a clear position on this project and whether or not they think it would be good for the community, with the exception, I believe, of one comment from Alexa Vilas about Slow Factory, which we heard tonight is now no longer part of the project. So this is a two-part resolution. It is simply asking for the current local elected officials to explain as soon, and I list them there in the text, to explain as soon as possible whether they believe the Made in New York campus project should move forward as currently designed. And the second part asks those local elected officials to explain what kind of community engagement they expect the Made in New York campus project to receive going forward. I think these are again, not asking people to take a position in this committee on the project, just asking for our elected officials to be clear about how they feel about this project, considering that none of them were in office when this project was announced at this point more than 6 years ago. And the last thing I'll say, and I'll stop talking on this point, I just want to point out a number that this board does not hear very often. The Made in New York campus started as a 300,000 square foot project costing $136 million in public money. It is now a 1.567 million square foot project costing $323 million in public money. So it has grown by 800% since it was initially announced in February of 2017. I think our elected officials should be commenting on that growth as well. That's the spirit of this resolution. So thank you very much for letting me present that.
Very good. So have you asked, we should ask you're proposing that this become formal communication from CB7 to this assortment of elected officials?
Yes, that we would officially ask them as a board, please give us your current updated position on these two matters. Which again, to my knowledge, has not happened from any of the elected officials currently representing Sunset Park.
Okay, committee members?
Point of order, I believe we have lost our quorum for the committee. So I'm gonna ask Jeremy to do a quorum call.
No problem, Julia. I'm going to mute everyone. I'm going to call the committee members only. Please acknowledge your name when I call. Unmute yourself, acknowledge your name, and then mute yourself again. So we will start with Dan Murphy, David Estrada,
Present.
thank you. Amel Afzal, Sandra Alfonso, Joan Body, Justin Collins, Cynthia Gonzalez.
Present.
Thank you. Diana Gonzalez. Hector Gonzalez.
Here, I'm here.
Thank you. Leonette Lopez.
Here.
Thank you. Antoinette Martinez. Marilyn Melman. Gabina Morales.
Here.
Thank you. Karen Rolnick.
Present.
Thank you. Damaris Santiago. John Santori.
Present.
Thank you. Julio Pena.
Present.
Thank you. Julio, 8 people are here, 9 people are not. We do not have a quorum.
So I'll propose that we table this until our imminent meeting, since we know we have another coming up very shortly.
Okay, thank you very much.
And with that, may I entertain a motion to adjourn?
So motioned.
Motion by
Second.
Cynthia, thank you for that second. I'm gonna call for general assent on adjournment, unless there are any objections that need to be spoken or written at this moment.
None.
Hearing and seeing none, thank you very much. This ran long, but there was substantial exchange. Thank you very much. I think even our agency partners are still on the line. Thank you for hanging in there. And good night for everyone. And thank you. And we'll look forward to scheduling the upcoming committee members.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.